everybody. Welcome to another episode of NASA in Silicon Valley Live. I am your host, Abby Tabor, and I have with me here today a very special guest. I have Dr. Eugene Tu with me. He is the Center Director for NASA's Ames Research Center here. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Great. So listen, I've heard a story that when you started at Ames, you were just an intern. Is that right?
That is true. That is true. It's 33 years ago now.
Wow.
I was an undergraduate student and was between my freshman and sophomore years. And I got an opportunity to come here and intern and have pretty much been here ever since.
Wow. No breaks. You went from intern to recent grad getting a job?
Yes, I was given the opportunity to be hired permanently once I finished my degree.
Cool.
And then NASA funded me and supported me through graduate school as well, graduate studies, and I've been pretty much with NASA ever since. I did do a short stint at NASA headquarters in the early 2000s, but pretty much as homegrown to Ames as possible.
Mm-hmm. That's an awesome story. It just shows where you can go starting from an internship. Awesome.
Yeah.
Nice. So we are calling today's episode Meet NASA in Silicon Valley because we haven't really formally introduced our center to the Twitch audience. So I wanted to ask Eugene to give us a little overview of what happens here at Ames, what we focus on, what are some things we're working on.
Okay. So we are one of 10 NASA centers across the country.
Right.
We are a research center, so a lot of our products are research and technology oriented. We work in science, we work in technology, we work in engineering. One of the interesting things about Ames is we are very cross-cutting. We work in every area that NASA has, whether it be aeronautics, technology, science, or exploration. We have some very unique facilities here. We have the largest wind tunnel in the world here.
Oh, wow.
The test section of this wind tunnel is 80 foot by 120 feet. You can put a full-size commercial airplane inside it. We have one of the most capable ArcJet facilities. This is a plasma wind tunnel which simulates entry conditions through the atmosphere when a spacecraft comes back into the atmosphere, the very high heating rates.
Right, so super hot, super fast.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. We have one of the most powerful supercomputers in the world where we do a lot of computational simulations, and that's my own personal background. I'm a computational fluid dynamicist.
Oh, cool.
So I started studying here in looking at modeling aerodynamics and aerothermal dynamics.
Okay.
And then we have some very unique simulation facilities, human-in-the-loop simulation facilities. We have a vertical motion simulator, which basically is a simulator on a beam that can go up and down 6 stories, so really provides high-fidelity motion. All the shuttle astronauts trained on this facility.
Okay. I was going to ask, what is that simulating? That's a spacecraft landing?
It can
simulator?
simulate aircraft. It can simulate spacecraft. It could be very much a key part of studying lunar landings, for example, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And it is one of the highest fidelity facilities around in terms of simulating motion without actually having to fly.
Okay.
And then one of our other key simulation facilities is we have a 360-degree air traffic control tower simulator that airports have used to look at how to place their towers or to move their control towers and look at the sight lines of the airport and so forth.
I've been in there and it's really cool. You feel like you're looking out the window of an air traffic control tower.
You do, very much so.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like the broad portfolio or the array of activities that we have at Ames. There's small satellites, right?
Yep. And autonomy and robotics, entry systems technologies. We're here in the heart of Silicon Valley, and so we try to leverage our location here and partner with many of the companies around here to bring high technology and innovation to NASA's missions.
Yeah, excellent. And I know a subject that's going to come up later in the show is about drones.
Yes.
That's a big...
Well, that's a big area for aeronautics now. We want to figure out how to integrate drones into the national airspace so they can fly safely with piloted vehicles. You can imagine in the future there'll be both piloted vehicles and unpiloted vehicles that really take advantage of the airspace, whether it's transporting cargo or people, or monitoring the agriculture or water resources, all the types of things that people can use drones for these days. We can help with that if they can really be used in a less restrictive way in the airspace.
Right. And we know there are going to be millions of them coming, so we need a way to regulate the traffic. Right?
Yes, and do it in a safe way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I know that's something we work on a lot here. Is there something about the center that you think is particularly cool, a factoid that you love to share?
Well, the thing that's really cool about the center is the people.
Yeah.
And the diversity of the people we have here coming from all different fields, whether it be science or engineering, technology. the business fields, the marketing fields, communication fields.
True.
And we, I think here at this center, being in Silicon Valley, we try to bring that spirit of innovation and entrepreneurship to the NASA mission. And so that's really probably one of the coolest things about the center.
Yeah, I think that's true. We tend to get in early
Yep.
on concepts,
Yes,
right? You know, research that nobody else has thought to do yet.
Right.
We like to
Exactly.
get in there early. Cool. Yeah. So you seem to know a fair bit about the center.
A little bit.
But I wonder if you know the answers to these questions.
Okay.
It's quiz time.
Okay.
Are you up for playing
Sure.
a little true-false quiz here with me?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Let's learn some more things about NASA and Silicon Valley and NASA in general. True or false, Eugene? Ames was America's second aeronautical research lab.
That is true. We are the second oldest
Yep.
NASA center. We were actually formed in 1939 before there was a NASA. NASA was formed in 1958.
Okay.
So we're one of the
20 years
original 4 NACA centers. That's the National Advisory Committee on Aeronautics. And so much of our roots is back in the days of aeronautics.
Yeah, that's right. I got scolded once for calling that the NACA,
No, NACA.
NACA, before it was NASA.
Right.
Exactly. Cool. So that history goes way back. Now, more recently, true or false? Did we once slam an object into the moon for science?
Well, that's a technical term, right? Yes.
Exactly,
It is true.
exactly.
It is true. Back in 2009, this was the L-Cross mission.
Right.
And it was actually a very innovative idea. We basically flew with LRO, which is Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, which is orbiting the moon and mapping the moon. We took the second stage of that rocket and basically slammed it into the moon in the southern pole region near a crater.
Okay.
And basically we're looking for the evidence of water ice. And so what happened was we took another spacecraft that separated from that second stage and followed it in. And basically once that first stage or that second stage hit, it basically threw up a lot of material. The second vehicle came in, and about 6 minutes of taking measurements before it also hit the moon and relayed that information back to us and to our scientists.
Okay. Sent the data back just before itself
Just before
crashed.
it also crashed into the
Wow.
moon. Yeah.
Awesome.
So it was a way, and we confirmed that there is evidence of water ice trapped in the permanently shadowed crater regions of the moon.
That is so cool. And permanently shadowed, right? They
Yes,
never see light.
They never see light.
That's so cool. Neat. Awesome. All right, moving on. So far, so good. Question 3. Our planet-hunting Kepler Space Telescope has identified more than 2,500 planets to date.
Well, that's partially true. It's actually closer to 4,000 now.
Is it really?
4,000 confirmed planets.
Confirmed planets, not
And-
just candidates that might possibly
Right,
be?
right. And more interestingly, dozens of planets that might be in the habitable zone. This is the zone where temperature, we're looking for the Goldilocks, not too hot, not too cold,
Yeah.
where liquid water could exist
Okay.
in that temperature range. And we think that's a key ingredient for the possibility of life. And so we're looking for how many planets there. And even though that number may seem small, 30 or so right now
Yeah.
confirmed, we're only looking at a very small portion of the galaxy. And
Okay.
so if you really expand that out, there are unestimated amounts of planets
Wow.
out there that could support life.
And those could be targets for us to look at a little more closely someday?
Exactly. And with some of the
Cool.
telescopes that including JWST, that's going to be launched soon.
The James Webb
correct.
Space
we will
Telescope,
be
yeah.
we will be studying those planets to see what other evidence that they could support life we might be able to detect.
Yeah, so cool. I love Kepler because even if you don't understand the physics of the spacecraft or the engineering or whatever, it's discovering new worlds.
It is. It is.
So much possibility there. That's exciting. All right. Question 4. We have free-flying, Star Trek-inspired robots helping astronauts perform experiments aboard the International Space Station.
Well, I'm going to have to say false on that one, but only a portion of it. We do have
Okay.
free-flying robots.
We do.
And of course, Star Trek has inspired a lot of things. If
It
you
must
think
have.
of things like cell phones and
Yeah.
communicators and tricorders, but this one was inspired by Star Wars.
Yes.
By
Okay.
I think it was a lightsaber training drone in what's now episode 4. It'll always be the first episode to me. 'Cause
Right,
I grew up
right,
at that
right,
time.
right. Same
But
here.
that was the inspiration for basically a robotic assistant that can be floating inside the space station or any spacecraft, and be moving around, be taking data, be taking video, be helping the crew do tasks, and also be doing other more mundane tasks like inventory control of everything that's in it. You'd be surprised how many things they get misplaced on a space station when you're in zero G or microgravity. Things just kind of float away and into little crevices. And so being able to find those and identify those is a pretty significant task for the crew.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was a problem. Is this the Spheres robot?
There's Spheres, there's a Spheres, and then we're doing a subsequent follow-on called Astro B, which is going to have more smarts in it and be able to do more things as a robotic assistant.
Okay, cool. I've heard those names. I think people can find videos of those. Yeah,
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so Star Wars, not Star Trek.
In that case.
I thought I might trip you up there, but too good. Okay, last question. What do the stars in the NASA insignia, or as we call it, the meatball, represent?
Well, first of all, it's not a true or false question, but it represents space.
Yeah.
And the other portions of the meatball, the red symbol there represents aeronautics.
Yep, the little swooshy symbol.
Yes.
Cool.
So that's what's in the meatball.
Exactly, because it's representing space. We are America's space agency, but also a lot more, also all the aeronautics components and all the other science that we do. Yeah, and so today was actually an important day at NASA.
Yes.
We had the State of NASA address from acting NASA Administrator Robert Lightfoot. So could you tell us a little bit about what we learned today, what you took away from that?
Yes, so today was the release of the President's budget for fiscal year 19. And so as part of that, Acting Administrator Lightfoot gave a briefing on the state of NASA and also what's held in this proposed budget that the President has released. It's a good budget for NASA.
Great.
It increases NASA's budget over the current year by about $400 million. There's a significant focus on lunar exploration, including eventually returning humans to the moon.
Awesome.
But starting out with robotic exploration, quite a bit of emphasis on doing this in partnership with other international entities, but also partnership with commercial and the private sector. So it's a very, very exciting time for us. Here at Ames, we have a lot that we can contribute to this area. We have a lunar science capabilities here.
Right.
We run one of the virtual institutes within the agency that focuses on planetary science, including lunar science. Also, we have small missions that we have been proposing and looking at. 3 of the last 5 missions to the moon from the U.S. were Ames run. And we have
really
another
impressive.
one coming up called Resource Prospector that we're proposing. And then the third area is the commercial and partnership areas that we focus on here. And so we have a lot to contribute here.
Awesome.
We're very excited about this budget.
Great. So we're well suited for this new budget. We're in a good position.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Cool. So that was a good start to the day. And then this is also a special day here because we had 12 special visitors. We had a dozen social media followers of NASA.
Yes. They're around.
And
yes.
they're here. They're here in the studio. And we're going to be bringing them up to talk to us about what they got to see and do today.
Right.
But let's run through the activities that they got to see to tell our audience what's coming up.
Okay.
So we have some videos to show while we describe what they got to see. So why don't you tell us about first was a talk about the lunar rover mission.
Right. So we talked about L-Cross earlier, which basically identified the existence of water ice on the moon.
Yeah.
We now are interested in how much. Because whether or not we can actually get to that water ice and turn it into resources is a big question. So that's Resource Prospector.
Yeah.
Then we have the Lunar Landing Facility or Lunar Surface Facility, Lab Facility, where they basically got a look at how we would test rovers out. I think we have over 8 tons of simulated lunar dirt in there.
That's right,
And so they have the ability to see how the rovers might function in such an environment.
Right, exactly, because the lighting is different and
exactly
maneuvering a robot on the surface is going to depend on that. Yeah, exactly. So those were their first 2 stops of the day, and then they also did some hands-on activities with our experts here. So could you tell us about those 4 visits?
Yes, so we had a fruit fly lab where we basically fly fruit flies on station to test their reaction and their response to microgravity environments. And so they had an opportunity, I believe, to count fruit flies, male and female fruit flies.
Right.
Then we have the Airspace Operations Lab, where they had the ability to look at how we test unmanned aerial vehicles, or UASs, drones, if you will,
drone traffic management,
in the various test sites. And then we also had a fatigue countermeasures lab that they took a look at. This really started with aviation when we were looking at pilots and long-haul flights and their fatigue issues, but it's a big issue for space flight too.
Right.
And so that was that activity. And then I think what we're looking at here is the Human Vibration Lab,
right?
Where they looked at basically during a launch environment, could you actually read the displays
I see.
under high vibration? And we've figured out that you can synchronize the displays so that they can read it. And then finally, the vertical motion simulator, which I talked about earlier, a 6-story tall facility that basically can simulate aircraft, rotorcraft, or helicopters, and also lunar landers, for example.
So cool. Wow, that's an awesome overview of the center and the fact that they got to go do these things themselves. I'm pretty jealous. I only got to go on one, so maybe later for
Next
me.
time, we'll get you to all of them.
Right. Well, thank you so much for giving this overview of the center.
My pleasure.
And giving us a little time. So we look forward to having you back someday to tell us more of your story.
I look forward to it.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for being here. They're coming. We're going to bring out our NASA social guests.
Okay.
So I'll ask you to switch places with them.
All right.
And in the meantime, if you're just joining us, this is another episode of NASA in Silicon Valley Live. And today we're talking about our NASA social event. If you have any comments to make about what you're seeing that these guys got to try out today, or if you have any questions about their experience, leave them in the Twitch chat, and we'll see if we can squeeze in some of those. And here they come. Come on out, Team Fruit Fly. Welcome.
Thank you.
This is my team. I got to go on the Fruit Fly Lab experience today. So thanks for coming out here, guys. And let's do a quick little intro. Could you tell me your first name and, if you had to choose, moonwalk or spacewalk?
I'm Jerome, and if I had to pick, I think I would go with the moonwalk.
Yeah?
Yeah, because who else gets to do that but astronauts? And that's pretty limited number of people that have had that kind of opportunity. That would be pretty cool.
Well, this
Not
is
that
true.
anybody's done spacewalks here in this room either, but
One might argue the same for spacewalks.
yeah, exactly.
But I would also go with moonwalk.
It would be fun.
I think it would be fun. Moving down the line.
Hi, I'm Gaby. I would also, I think, do a moonwalk.
Yeah?
I don't have a reason. I don't think I need one.
No,
Moonwalk.
kind of self-explanatory. Nice.
Hi, I'm Amanda, and I would also go with moonwalk because it is less scary.
Less scary. Yeah. I guess
Spacewalk is,
you might float off into oblivion.
exactly.
I want to run on the moon, and because the gravity is lower,
Big jumps.
like bouncing jumps. Yeah,
Do
exactly.
some exercise.
That's right. That's my reason. So you guys got to visit the Fruit Fly Lab, and I think we're going to roll that video again, and I'll give a little background on why NASA does fruit fly experiments. So these are experiments we do on the International Space Station that teach us something about the biological effects of space flight on humans, on the human body. So in this activity, our guests perform the actual steps that we do, scientists here do, for preparing experimental fruit fly samples for launch to the space station, and then they practice some of the post-flight tests that the scientists perform on those samples when they come back to Earth, right?
Correct.
So tell us more. What did you do today?
So one of the neat opportunities that we have as social media guests here on during this event, State of NASA, was that we were exposed to so many different processes and people that do fantastic work and fascinating work in many different disciplines from their fields. And part of the biology testing and the fruit fly experiments that are done on the space station involves a lot of simulation that can be done on fruit flies that live 5 to 8 weeks, but have very similar genetic makeup of humans and can be very useful in determining various behaviors or disease fighting techniques or how they cope with bacteria infections and things like that. And it's fascinating to see how all of the team works on that, the scientists and the technicians and the process that goes into that, and putting them on the various flights that go up to the space station and just the handling and all of that. logic is and strategy and all of that is fascinating to see. And the people are so excited about working on those projects. It's just really interesting.
Yeah, you can see that. And it's a complex endeavor for sure. All those
really
people
is.
involved in getting things from here to Kennedy Space Center launched at the space station. It's pretty fascinating,
Yeah, and they're very tiny and difficult to manipulate.
Yes, yeah. Did you have that experience yourself? You were sorting flies, weren't you?
Yeah, we like sorted them between male and female. They have discerning features, and we learned about that. It's just something that I've never thought about.
Right.
So it was fascinating to learn about something you really have never given much thought to.
Yeah, exactly. I think we have some photos that we could throw up soon here of you guys sorting flies and performing some of these tests. And while they call that up, how did you find it sorting flies or the fly climbing test that we did?
Sorting flies is quite difficult. I mean, your eyes are really hurting after a while. Yeah, looking through the microscope. So
here's a vial of flies that we're seeing right now. Was this a video one of you took?
I think it is.
Yeah, is that you, Jerome? I think so. So you can see the little flies crawling around in there.
And what's fascinating is we only dealt with a dozen flies at one time, and what we were seeing were vials that had, I don't know, thousands of flies. I mean, it was a sheer effort for sure that those technicians go through to separate and coordinate the payloads. And then if there's a delay in one of the launches, they were explaining to us how they would have to substitute in various, boxes of vials, and it was just a real interesting breakdown of the strategy and the effort of support staff and all of it that goes into putting these experiments up on the space station. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it was absolutely.
It really is.
Oh, Gaby, here you are.
That's how I felt. It was like so amazing.
You do look pretty happy there to be working with flies.
Yeah, never thought I would have that big of a smile on my face about
looking
flies.
at fruit flies, yeah.
Yeah.
And can you describe a little when they were running around in the vial? There were so many of them.
Yeah, what's incredible is we did these tests that compared different age groups, so old flies versus new flies, and you'd slam them down on the counter, and so they'd all start on the bottom level, and we'd time how fast it took for them to rise above, I think it was 5 centimeters. And there was a difference, or there's supposed to be a difference between the old and the new
Activity behavior.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and they're also testing that when they get back from space, if they have, if that's altered at all, if the
Their
time that
behavior
takes,
and-
for them to get to the top of the vial is slower in any way.
Right. Do you remember the fun fact they wanted us to take away about the number of genes involved in diseases that flies share with humans?
Isn't it 75%?
Right, yeah.
Just incredible.
And that's why we're doing all of this research, because we can find out much faster with flies in space.
And actually the heartbeat, which is the same as in
The heartbeat,
human.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
It is the same. Did they say it was about 60 beats per minute for
Yeah.
flies as well as humans, right?
Yeah, 60 to 80, I don't know, something.
Yep,
it says.
something like that, right.
Just like in humans anyway, it looks like.
Right. So the flies are good stand-ins for humans, and because they have a shorter lifespan, we can see aging and the effects of a long time in space faster, right?
Yeah.
And
So
one of the fascinating elements to it was that the generations that are created are 2 weeks in duration, and so that's perfect because SpaceX Dragon is up there for 30 days, and so they can do this experiment, have multiple generations take place during the experiments, and then bring it back for a lot of the analysis there in the lab, and it was just very cool. And because they share so many features that are similar to our human genome makeup, it's truly a masterful component to learning about how humans work in our physiology and all of that. The fruit fly is truly remarkable, as well as mice are an incredible device to use, if you will,
Right.
for learning about what we do and how we behave.
incredibly useful systems. I think we're being told that the next group is excited to come up here, so I will ask you to return to the peanut gallery, and we will see you later.
Thank you.
And we're going to bring up Team Drone. Thanks for sharing your experience. Woo! Woo! I wanted to check in with the Twitch chat. If you are just joining us, this is NASA in Silicon Valley Live, and we're talking about the NASA Social that we're hosting here today at Ames. And before Team Drone joins us, I just want to share a couple comments from the Twitch chat. There was a vote for the moonwalk. We were debating moonwalk or spacewalk. We all went for moonwalk, so did somebody from the chat. We also have a comment, how weird, sharing that time flies like an arrow and fruit flies like a banana. Very appropriate. And the Suspicious Pixel wants to know if there are any fly handler jobs available. You can go look for jobs on USA Jobs and intern.nasa.gov to look for NASA jobs. But we did ask the scientists how they got into working on fruit flies for space, and they all came from biology backgrounds and happened to be space nerds. So when they found a chance to use their science for space, they took it. So welcome, guys. You guys are Team Drone. Tell us more. Well, first of all, let's do a quick round of introductions. I don't know your names. We didn't get a chance to meet earlier. So tell us your name and your favorite planet.
James and, I get in so much trouble if I said Pluto. Probably Mars.
Troublemaker.
Yeah.
Mars. Okay. All right.
I'm Jason, and I'm gonna put in a word for a planet that doesn't get quite enough love. Venus.
Venus.
We're gonna go Venus.
Choice.
Yeah.
Is there a specific reason?
Well, I really like some of the concepts that are coming out for Venus exploration, and I know there's a lot of work going into finding computers that can last for more than 5 seconds on the surface of Venus
cool.
now at NASA. So I think it would be great to go back to Venus with some probes in the future. So
awesome.
Just a lot to learn there.
Cool. Nice vote for Venus. What's your name?
Hi, I'm Casey.
Casey.
Favorite planet is going to have to be Earth. We kind of live here. We got to show Earth some love.
I was hoping someone would vote for Earth.
The home field advantage, yeah.
Nice. All right. So to get into the subject of where you guys spent your afternoon, we have the footage to roll again from the Airspace Operations Lab. So NASA is helping develop an air traffic management system for drones that will make sure that they can operate safely these unmanned vehicles in low altitude airspace. And so in this activity, our guests operated virtual drones in a simulated environment, and they learned all about the advanced technologies and software tools being tested by researchers today. So tell us about this. I know you mentioned earlier that you're a pilot in training, right?
Yeah, I'm actually first year at San Jose State, and I'm working on my private pilot's license right now. So it's actually kind of interesting to see because from a family of pilots, or I guess we all have an aviation background, we've always had like not a fear, but you know how dangerous bird strikes are with, you know, just a couple pound bird. Imagine a 8-pound piece of metal getting sucked into an engine. So it's really cool to see the people who are working on a system to prevent accidents like that and setting the standard for the future of drones.
Awesome. Yeah, well said.
Yeah.
Cool. Do you have an interest in aviation that brought you here today, or?
No, I think I thought we were randomly selected. My dad was actually a private pilot, but I think I was really interested in this from the tech side, how they're building this system rather than having sort of a single database run by the FAA that would be the central place for everything. They're working with industry. They're working with different companies that have expressed interest in parts of this, whether it's running a service or building drones themselves or providing data to it, and then having them all kind of talk to each other, which is an interesting technical problem, sort of setting the standard, and then how do you put up your hand as a drone operator and say, I would like to fly here, please, and what happens after that? Like, how, what's the space, what's the altitude, how long does it last, so that nothing crashes into you?
Yeah, it's super complicated, like everything, really.
Don't crash your drone into other drones. It's very important.
That is to be avoided, right. But it will take NASA and industry and the FAA working together and creating new software to make all that happen, right? There's just too much going on to do it more simply.
If they just have them all sorted out by like flying their drones around until they crash into each other, seems like a bad idea. Perhaps lay some groundwork there so that the drone and all the people involved in this, they want to do this too. And so it sounds like NASA and the FAA are working together to kind of create that shared space for all of these groups to get together and figure out a system that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah,
awesome.
that's true. They were talking about how companies are basically signing on to this idea of having their own network to communicate with these drones. So it's not that you're putting on the headset and talking to an air traffic controller. It's that these companies have designated areas that they have selected, time and space that they're going to be operating their drones in, and that they're all on the system and kind of agreeing and picking out, okay, you can have this space, but I'm going to take this space.
Oh, okay. Yeah, working it out amongst themselves. Casey, can you tell us what you actually did? What did you get to try out in this activity?
We actually got to use this system called Max, and we were able to set up our own drone flight paths.
Cool.
So we all got a different situation. There's one where we're simulating a drop of supplies to somebody who was attacked by an alligator in Florida.
That could happen.
Exactly, you never know. Another one was checking a boat dock for any type of activity or barnacles or just anything that could potentially happen on the dock.
Okay.
And so it's just understanding what this technology can do for industry, not just for private industry, but for public industry, such as analyzing areas where there's crime and taking pictures, or going to an area where there's a fire and being able to determine, okay, what's the best way to attack this fire to put it out.
Right. Maybe in buildings, or maybe like wildfires that have been happening all over California.
Exactly.
Right?
And being able to block out people you don't want in, like if the fire department needs to rush to a fire, that they could actually override in an area and say, we need you, if you're a drone, you need to get out of this area now while we fly over there.
Right, that's a good point. Interesting stuff. I think we have some social posts if they are ready to be brought up. Is that
That's
yours,
us.
Jason? Yeah, that's you guys. So this is the Airspace Operations Lab. And can you tell me what you got to see there on the screens? What's behind there?
Yeah. So basically, there were three kind of large monitors. They both show different areas in which that the drones, and it kind of give a visual map of like an airspace that was being taken up. So they filed basically a flight plan for this drone. And then it appeared on the map at the time, the altitude, and it basically made a 4-dimensional square, with the 3 dimensions and then also time.
I see.
And then that was allocated for that specific drone.
Okay,
And
it's
we didn't have to be the ultimate drone flying experts. They actually have a system there. I am inputting for my barnacle search. They're actually using Google Earth to provide the data, and then we built basically a KML file, so a standard kind of Google Earth data file with waypoints where we wanted to fly the drones, and then that gets submitted to the Max system, which does a little massaging to sort of say we're going to take off from here, we're going to fly at this altitude around this path, and then we're going to land again, and then reserves that space. And you can see in Google Earth, you get to see the sort of virtual space that's this shape that you're reserving temporarily for your drone flight.
Is it like you put in a request and it says, well, not exactly that, but here's a similar flight path?
It sounds like if you get rejected, ideally you would have software on your end to say, well, what about this instead? And that's one of the things that the system, it's not a centralized system, so it's not going to say, I'm assigning you this path. It's more just going to say somebody's already flying in there, and then your system would say, okay, here's an alternative until you get one that works
for you. Yeah, I see. Is that you, Casey?
That is. I am making a route for a drone to overlook a cruise ship.
Oh. A cruise ship? Did you hear the context of why you'd be over?
No, we get to kind of come up with our own situation,
I see.
which is how the ridiculousness of alligator attack came about.
I see.
Maybe the cruise line is selling you a Blu-ray of the cruise ship with you standing out on the deck, and they use a drone to do that.
Yeah.
Anything
Probably,
could happen.
actually.
There are lots of applications for drones. I mean, just all of the different things that they were talking about, and in some of their tests, they've done things like dropping an emergency survival kit into the desert in Nevada. That's a entirely plausible thing that you might not be able to get to somebody before night falls, but you might be able to send a drone out there.
Yeah. That was one of the interesting parts of this whole simulation, was understanding that what NASA is doing is prescribing certain types of standard operating procedures and policies, and then once they prescribe that, then industry can take off with it and advance it in whatever ways they see fit for industry and wherever technology leads us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're kind of laying the groundwork for essentially a future that's autonomous.
Because we see that future coming.
Yeah.
And somebody has to do that early work, right?
Yeah.
To lay the groundwork. Awesome. So did you guys learn anything that surprised you? Was all of this surprising for you that NASA's working on this, or did you already have a sense that drones were in our wheelhouse here?
So I was here a couple of years ago, and they were talking about this, but it was more abstract. It was obviously 2 years earlier in the research,
Right.
And it was. I think that it sounds like they were still kind of working through what some of the concepts would be. So it's very simple, almost like fill out your flight plan and press a web form, press submit, and get a yes or no back.
Okay.
And now, obviously, this is far more sophisticated. They have 4 levels of flight, from the most basic, sort of like very simple, not crowded airspace at all the way up to level 4, where you're flying through a major city.
Yes,
and
right.
they've tested, I think, phases 1 and 2, and they're moving on to 3, and then they'll reach phase 4. So they're from 2 years ago where I came, you can see that they've really gotten a lot closer to what they're trying to get as their end goal.
Yeah, that's awesome that you got to see the before and after 2 years apart. Cool. Perfect timing,
That's
really.
how awesome it is. Yeah.
Well, you know what that sound means.
Yeah.
That means it's time for you to make way for
Yes.
Team Sleep. But thank you for being up here, and we'll see you in a bit. Yay, Team Drone. And while we wait for Team Sleep to join us, a quick reminder that you are watching NASA in Silicon Valley Live, and we're talking about the NASA Social that took place here today with 12 visitors. Here come 3 more. Team Sleep.
Hey,
Welcome.
thank you.
Thank you.
So this is an exciting one that I'm looking forward to hearing more about. But let's first of all meet you guys. What are your names? And tell me Earth or Mars. Vote Earth or Mars.
I'm Brian, and definitely Mars.
Okay. You're abandoning Earth, just wholesale.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's gonna happen eventually. So
Interesting. All right.
And I am Megan, and I will go ahead and vote for Earth.
Thank you. Thank you. Somebody had
Home
to,
base.
but it's balanced that way. Appreciate it. So, what on earth are we talking about regarding sleep? You guys went to the fatigue countermeasures lab, which basically means they're working on solutions to fight problems associated with fatigue when we can't think clearly and can't operate smoothly, right? So we're going to roll again that little clip that we saw earlier. So the idea here is that an astronaut's ability to maintain focus during long-duration spaceflight is critical for mission success. That makes sense. And in this activity, participants can perform tests to study the effects of sleep deprivation on the human body, and then I think how you're able to perform under those conditions, right?
yeah.
So I don't know what that means you guys got to do today, so tell us more. What happened?
Well, we first started at the NASA Sleep Countermeasures Division, and we kind of went to 3 substations within that.
Okay.
The first was like a driving simulator, and
We saw that in
it's
the video.
mostly meant for people who are sleep deprived for 30 hours, and then seeing what the effects of sleep deprivation would be
30
on
hours.
driving reaction times.
Cool.
Do
Interesting.
you want to do the next one?
The first one that I did was the room that they keep the test subjects awake in for up to 30 hours, they said.
How do they keep them awake?
So you're in a bed. You're not lying all the way down. You're kind of reclined a little bit, and you're wearing one of those. They didn't show it in the video, but it's like a full cap with all the electrodes on it.
Yeah. I saw someone wearing that.
And you just recline there for 30 hours. They give you little
Is that
sandwiches.
someone wearing electrodes?
Yes,
Yeah.
that is the last member of Team Sleep, or Team No Sleep, as it should be called.
Right, as it should be called.
But yeah, so you wear that little cap and you lay in that bed for 30 hours. They keep you awake and feed you just enough so that you're at your like basal metabolic rate.
Okay. Does that mean
And-
just are you hungry at
Yeah,
that level? Just enough to
barely-
get by?
Barely enough to get by. And then
Okay.
every so often you go out and do tests like the driving one
Okay.
that he mentioned. And in addition to the driving one, there was also the high stakes claw machine, they called it, where
High-stakes
you
claw
are
machine.
attempting to grab the capsule that's coming by the space station with food.
Okay, to resupply the space
Yes.
station, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Which is difficult even when you're awake.
Oh, I imagine. So sleep deprived, how does that go? Did you guys try that? Was that
We did, yeah.
Okay, tell us what that's like. How hard was it? And
It was pretty hard. I mean, you have this one knob on your left hand, and you have to use it to push in to move the arm towards the resupply capsule, and you have to grab it, but there's like a very narrow margin of error that you have to get. So
Is it like one of those things outside in the mall or the supermarket where you got a claw
Yeah.
that you have to control to grab the teddy bear? Was it
Yeah.
something like that? Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
exactly
and not
like
easy.
that.
definitely not easy.
Yeah.
Well, I understand that you two were graded on your abilities. And I am pleased to announce the winner is Megan,
Nice.
the grand prize winner of
Thank you.
controlling the robot to resupply the space station. Thank you.
I do have to say, though, they give you a score out of 10, and the first attempt that I gave, I got a 0.6
Okay.
out of 10. But
Out
by,
of 10.
but by the third time, it was up to about 7. So.
Okay. Well, astronauts have training, so
Yes.
that's okay.
Yes.
That's,
Totally.
that's
I can
reasonable.
imagine that they'll get very good at it after a while.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And one of the coolest things about that one was that they said that that's the exact simulation that the astronauts run for when
Oh,
they're
really?
training for their Canadarm. Yeah,
It's
it's
the
really
same
cool.
test that they would give
Yeah.
them. Awesome. How cool. Did you guys expect to be doing that when you came to NASA
Definitely
today?
not. It's cool.
Not
Did
at
you-
all.
Yeah.
Update your resume.
Astronauts in training.
You should. You got to work that in somehow. I have a comment from the chat here. 30 hours, which was the sleep deprivation that volunteers undergo. 30 hours, a basic gamer's weekend. I was in there recently and I saw they have all kinds of board games and books and things, so they keep people entertained to keep them awake.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Interesting. Interesting.
There's all the dim red lighting.
Oh, really?
As well. Yeah, you
Yeah.
can't have it be bright with blue light, especially, because that will keep you awake.
But that sounds like torture to me. You're almost lying down in a dim room and they won't let you fall asleep.
I think the people sign up for it.
They do. They do.
made that choice.
In the name of helping science, they submit to that. Yeah. So is this your first time here for you guys, or have you been to a NASA social before?
I have not been to a NASA social before.
Okay.
Yeah, same.
Same for you?
Yeah.
So did you find any surprises here today? Did you know that Ames works on all kinds of things like drones and sleep studies and fruit flies?
Yeah, no, I didn't really have a full idea of the scope of what Ames works on. It was really cool to see all the different facets of what NASA's working on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, and for me, I am a PhD student in planetary science, so my day in and day out is the science side of things, and all the sleep experiments are on the human side,
Right.
which was really interesting to see how broad of a scope is covered here.
Right.
Yeah.
And how it all comes together, right? Like those
Yeah.
sleep studies will help astronauts who are going to go to Mars, which is what you're studying potentially, right?
Yeah, so everything comes together at
Yeah.
the end, which is really neat.
Yep, I love seeing that here about NASA. Awesome. Were there any points you'd like to add about your sleep study experience?
No, it did make me feel tired.
It
though.
did. It
Yeah,
did.
totally.
Were you
Right after
sleepy?
lunch, I was like ready
Right.
for a nap. Yeah.
That wasn't the perfect time to go, but awesome. All right, then.
Cool.
I will see you guys in a little bit, and I will invite up Team VMS.
Mom and Dad.
Thanks for coming. So while Team VMS joins us, quick reminder that you're watching NASA in Silicon Valley Live, and we're hearing from the participants in today's NASA Social. Yay! Welcome. Hello. Welcome all, Team VMS. Can we go down the line, introduce yourselves, and tell me your favorite NASA memory? If you have one. A favorite moment from NASA.
My name is John, and I was 4 years old when man landed on the moon. My father woke me up and said, "You must see this."
Awesome.
And so it's etched.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm glad you remember that. That's so cool.
It might be a false memory.
Even
It
so.
might be all
even
made
so.
up. I might just have made that up. But
That's okay.
it's fine. Still, it's
still a good one.
It's still a good one.
Yeah.
My name is Kane, and the moment that stands out for me is the last space shuttle launch because it kind of heralded the new era of new technologies and systems to be developed here at Ames.
Awesome.
So.
Cool. Good one.
My name is Karen, and I have to say the last shuttle launch too, because I went to it at Cape Canaveral, and it was really surreal. I went for the NASA tweet up, and I didn't expect to be overwhelmed with emotions and like cry when the shuttle launched. It was really beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah.
What an awesome memory. And I heard a gasp from the studio audience. Someone out there is impressed. Yeah. I just want to check with Eric in the audio studio. Can you hear everybody okay? Because we're not as close to the table as we were with other groups. Thank you.
Yeah, I can hear you. The closer the better, though.
Okay. All right. We're good now. Okay, so you guys went to the VMS, which stands for the Vertical Motion Simulator, which sounds pretty awesome. I've never seen it in action. So we're going to roll that footage again while I tell you a little bit about it. This is a facility here at NASA in Silicon Valley, which is the nation's largest flight simulator. And in this activity, our guests learned how to pilot a UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter, because the facility can be outfitted to represent any kind of spacecraft that needs testing. They practice flying the shuttle in there. They can set it up to be the lunar lander. So you guys worked with helicopters today. Is that it? Yeah. Yep. Tell us about that. What's that like?
We went in with basically zero preparation, so there were a lot of simulated crashes.
Okay. That's bound to happen.
But watching the professionals go after was really humbling.
Oh, really?
The
Yeah.
sophistication of it.
Yeah. So that makes me think that it's very realistic if there can be that difference in skill level, right? Like.
Well, I don't have a benchmark, but I'm taking their word for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It feels like flying. It feels like you are actually in the air.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And the vibrations, the motion, the sound, and your head is in the game. You're like, okay, I'm rotating, I'm forward, I'm this, whichever motion it is.
So you're standing in this cab kind of thing, a box thing, but you feel that you're in a helicopter flying.
Yes.
That's so amazing.
And it could be anything. And this is the thing with this particular machine, is that it could be a lander. It could be a jet. It could be whatever it needs to be. And flight test, when it's real, is expensive and it's dangerous. And so this takes that danger and expense out of it.
Right.
And if it needs to be reset,
boop, it's reset. Yeah. It's like you were saying, beginners were crashing left and right. We can't do that with real people and real helicopters.
And the thing that I found most fascinating is how customizable all the different cockpits could be depending on what project they wanted to research.
Right.
And how they would test them out in a fixed base and then take that to the vertical motion simulator. And that was really awesome to watch.
That's cool.
A VMS is not just a box that's flying up and down. It's a whole building. There's a laboratory that where they can configure these cockpits. There's a whole, I would say, lockers full of things, instruments, controllers, gear to make whatever thing that we need to simulate right there. So, it's just it's the whole facility. It's not just the up, down, up, and
Yeah. The before, during, and after research side of it, I think. What did you feel flying it? Did it feel real?
Actually, it felt more disorienting being, because when we did the simulation at first, there wasn't motion for us when we were actually flying it. But then afterwards, when they turned on the motion, it actually felt better for me. I get slight motion sickness, and I felt more motion sickness just not moving but seeing the screen move.
I see, yeah.
Which was really interesting to me. But that's
interesting. That makes a difference.
Like John was saying, like every little vibration and movement, it felt really real, and it was really fun.
Yeah. I've never tried the VMS, but I was in the 747 flight simulator that we have here, and I can say they did not put on the motion, and we were convinced we were moving. Just from the visuals, they were that realistic, and your brain plays tricks on you. Yeah, interesting. Did you guys know that NASA did this kind of thing, or that kind of facility existed?
I didn't realize how mechanical it would be. They had these great archival photographs in the hallway leading up to it, and one of the really cool ones is in the old days they literally built model cities and ports, and so the pilot in the simulator was looking at this giant model through a viewport, and now it's all computers. But
so the visuals were an actual model, like of wood or something.
Yeah, and they said the simulator pilots could actually crash the cameras into the models, and they have to rebuild the models.
Wow, the early days of flight simulation.
Yeah.
Awesome, cool. Do we have some visuals that we can share from this experience? I think we have some posts. Nice. Was this?
So that's the cab. That that module can be replaced with different configurations. So that could be a helicopter or a spacecraft or an airplane. And while they will all look the same inside, it'll be specific to the task, whatever needs to be tested.
I think I remember that they change out the cockpit, right? So it'll be different seats for whichever craft they're testing.
And so according to the tour, it takes about 4 hours to flip one thing to another, and then about twice as long to make sure that it's functioning correctly with the systems that are gathering the data.
Cool. Nice.
So this is the room itself. You can see it's quite tall, 6 stories tall.
6 stories, right?
And basically, it doesn't need to be bigger than this, although it could be. You get the motion that you need to from this much space.
I see.
Keep in mind that we're testing normal flight conditions, not adverse flight conditions. So you don't need to be inverted, and you don't need to be able to do major drops.
Oh, okay. It doesn't need to flip you upside down.
It doesn't need to be flipped
testing
upside
rolls
down.
or something.
So this is me
There you are.
trying to not crash the helicopter. And actually, at first, I over-controlled because I wasn't familiar with it, and then it just feels just like another aircraft.
Okay. Do you have some flying experience?
I've got 200 hours of flying.
Okay.
So gliders, twin engine, single engine.
And it felt like that to you?
And it felt like that. Yeah, it felt like a real airplane.
That's incredible.
Or in this case, helicopter.
Yeah.
Or should I say helicopter, because we're not supposed to swear.
Yes, would you please? Please. Watch your language.
Okay, I did.
Does either of you have flight experience? I don't. So when I tried the 747, I just didn't know what to do. But
747s are complicated.
Oh, okay.
I was in a small plane where my friend was the pilot, and he's deathly allergic to bees, and there was a bee in the cockpit.
Oh, no.
So he gave us emergency instructions just in case he got stung, and that was a very stressful flight experience. But he landed it. There was no problem.
Wow. That's quite a
most I've
story.
ever flown.
Oh, man.
Flying with a bee. I don't have a bee story.
A bee story. That would be hard to top. I have a couple comments from the chat here. Oh, UH-60, that's awesome. I used to work on them. So that's cool.
Well, so he would be right at home in the way that it felt and moved.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And did you learn this fact today? What the person is asking, what is the maximum or minimum G-force you can experience in the VMS? Did they tell you that? I don't know.
I don't know. I think it's more about the motion that you'll feel rather than the Gs.
I think the specific unit we were in was optimized so it can independently control all 6 axes.
Mm-hmm. 6 degrees of motion, right?
Yeah, they were more excited about the fact that it could do all the axes independently for that one. So I'm not sure what the specific G.
Yeah, I see. Does it feel smooth when it's moving around like that? We could see the tracks in that photo going up 6 stories.
Yeah, honestly, when you're in there, it feels so smooth that like when you step outside of it and watch it move, it doesn't feel like it's moving that much.
Yeah.
I was actually surprised. I was like, oh wow, like it just like zips around, but it doesn't feel like that. It just feels like you would in like a plane.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm amazed by how realistic these things are. People actually train on these and learn to fly in that little building down the road, you know? Awesome. Tell me, what else surprised you? Were there any highlights you'd like to share from the experience before we move on from the VMS?
I don't know, I feel like all of us are really intrigued by all the old grips and gauges that were in that. They showed us a bunch of old parts from previous cockpits, and it was really fun to see. It was like stepping into a time capsule and seeing all the different things.
What kind of cockpits were those? Like from the Apollo era or something like that? Just really old stuff, yeah.
Cabinet full of different joysticks from different.
I see.
Actually, the interesting thing was the old lunar lander simulator was being refit as a Coast Guard boat simulator. So they showed us kind of the process of changing the cockpit around.
Cool. And that tells us that they do all kinds of tests in there, right?
Yeah.
It's not just helicopters and spacecraft landing, but
infinitely reconfigurable.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Right. And are you guys gamers? Because I wanted to ask, does it feel like a video game?
Flying feels like a video game.
Flying in general
Just
does?
in general, because there's systems that you have to learn. Just like a video game, once you know this, then they're better at doing it. Just like when you play, Cessna 152, there's those similar systems.
Okay, that's a good answer. Oh, it's almost time. One more question. I'm going to ask you this question because of what you told us. Did they give you air sickness bags?
They did have them.
They did.
I didn't need them, but they did have them there for us.
So that tells us somebody must need them.
Yeah.
They told us to try to puke on the walkway because it was very expensive to puke inside the cockpit.
You've actually got instructions where to puke on your visit to NASA.
Yep.
Outstanding. Excellent. Well, it's almost time to say goodbye. So you guys stay right here because I'm going to invite everybody else to come back out and say goodbye. Yay! Come on back, Team Sleep, Team Drone, Team Fruit Fly. We want to thank you for joining us today. It was so awesome having you, and it sounds like you learned a lot, so thank you for your participation. And then thank you for everybody watching. We'll be back in the future, so we will see you next time. So everybody say goodbye.
See you later. Have a lot of fun.
Yay.